Hi, welcome back from spring break. I know it wasn't much of a break for you, but I wanted to go over some really important things this week. This week covers a lot of different information, and I'm going to ask you actually to follow along in Moodle and to open up some documents as we go. So the first thing you'll do is read through Iowa 80. It is Friday night at Iowa 80. It is a ethnography that was written by a student about a truck stop in Iowa. And it basically gives you a general idea of what ethnographies might look like. You'll notice one of the biggest things is there's pictures in there. Those are the artifacts that we'll be talking about that are part of your rubric requirements. So go ahead and read that. It'll say 40 pages when you open it, but really it is copied more of the pages than what are in there. So just read just the Iowa 80 article. Unfortunately, I can't get back to the OU copy machine and have them fix that for me because of COVID. But so you'll answer the questions as they have them listed there. My suggestion to you is to read the questions first and then go through and read quickly through the ethnography. It's very narrative in form, so it should be pretty easy to get through. The second thing that comes up is we're talking about the field notes this week. So next week, you're going to have your first set of field notes due. And that will be the first time you observe a classroom. Or not really a classroom, your group, your subgroup in action. So you'll have the double entry note-taking worksheet. So go ahead and open that up now. It is called the field notes format. And this is the format I'm expecting you to write it in. You can handwrite this. A lot of times people just scan it and turn in the handwritten portion of it. Or you can type it up, but you do need to follow the format. So I want you to put in the subject, what group you're studying, where is it, the date and time. And then you'll see there are two sides to it. One says observation, and the other side says responses. The observation side is your actual, factual, exactly what you see. So there's 5 people sitting around the chair. There's 3 males and 2 females. They're within the age range of 18 and 30. They all have cards in their hands. What are they dressed like? What kind of hierarchy do you see there? Is there anybody that's in charge, or is it, just a basic group of people? I should be able to understand the group better from your field notes because you're really explaining to the reader what that specific group is. So a lot of your research is going to cover broadly, this is what the subgroup is like, but you're telling us this is what this specific group is like. On the other side, the responses side, is how you react to that. So if you're observing a meeting and people are whispering to each other in the background, and you're like, so you might say, if male and female were whispering to each other during the presentation, and the right-hand side under responses, you might say, that seemed kind of offensive. I'm surprised that they felt that was okay, or whatever you want to say. Your responses are going to be how you feel about that. You walked into the meeting, you thought it was going to be mostly one gender or more mixed gender, and boy, it's different than what you thought, or it's the same. It might be observations about the way they talk to each other. You might be surprised at some of the interactions they have. It doesn't have to be positive or negative, but all of your responses. How do you feel? What are you thinking about? This will make the narrative of your research much better. It's the same type of research that we do when we're talking about any type of research, no matter what you do for the rest of your college career. This is a good way to keep facts and then what your thoughts are on it. Underneath observations and responses, you're going to see 3 different areas. So the first one is what surprised me. What surprised me is going to be things that you weren't expecting, of course. So those were assumptions you had before you started studying the group. It might be, I'm surprised how hard they work or how hard they don't work, or how stressful it seems to be there, or how rude people were to me, whatever it ends up being. So you put in what surprised you about the group, or it might be positive, might be negative. It's really the experience that you notice. What intrigued you, that is going to be things that you need to research further. So you're like, wow, that was weird. While they were in the middle of the ceremony, they put 4 white rocks in the corners of the rooms. I don't know what that was for, so I probably want to look into it a little more deeply. Sometimes it's occupational terms they use, things they say that you're like, that seems interesting. I better figure out what that means. And then what disturbed you is really just the tensions between who you are, what you believe and feel, and what you see and observe within the group. So that's why I always say to pick a group that you're not familiar with, because there are some tensions, things you're concerned about. It doesn't mean like that you're deeply disturbed and you don't, you want to get out of the room. It's just what surprised you in a way that was uncomfortable, or just what made you feel some tension about the group. So if there's something you're like, wow, it was a absolutely fabulous experience and I have no tensions, then you put, I didn't really feel anything that was disturbing. If you do feel like, oh, the sorority girls were talking to each other and I was worried they were talking about me, you put that in there. So that's the field notes. Again, your first session, your first complete written field notes will be due next week. The next one is your interview packet. So understand that this is an entire packet. It's worth 15 points of your final grade, and it'll be worth 15% when you turn it in as well. So you have to write out 15 questions. In those questions, you will have to have 2 of the questions that are directly from your secondary source. That means you want to look at your source and say, okay, John Smith in his article blank said this about your group. How do you feel about this? The most important thing I want you to remember about these interview questions is these interview questions must be open-ended. They must be open-ended questions, meaning they cannot be answered yes or no, or like, how long have you been a part of this group? 15 years, that type of thing. They must be open-ended or you will not get points for them. So I've given you some suggestions for different ones you can use. But your first paragraph will describe the person. You will have to put this into your paper when you mention them, as I say here. You'll say, she's a 30-year-old Caucasian woman with curly brown hair wearing a pink dress with a belt on it. We're just giving ourselves a description. The language is going to be things, did they say, Did they say like, are they gesticulating with their hands? Did they look away a lot? Did they pause? These will be things that will fill in some of your descriptions when you're talking about it. Then you'll make connections between the interview findings and the subculture. So that means you must look at your secondary source, your all those sources that you've been looking up. Take a piece of information from that and say, maybe they said soccer players are generally very aggressive. Did you connect that? When you asked them about, did you feel soccer was aggressive? How did they match up to that? Did your interviewee, what they said during their interview, match up with what your sources said, or did it go against it? Exactly what they said. Then you'll have to attach the 15 questions and the answers. But as I say here, it's really important for you to note you don't have to write down every single word that they say. You want to write down what's important, and you'll have to have an answer for all 15 questions. But if you've shot a Zoom video or a YouTube video of it, Skype video, however you manage to do it, you can do it from that way. Then you're going to attach a glossary of terms that's unfamiliar to the reader. So I'll give you an example. So if I'm studying the smoking corner at South Foundation Hall, you would think, well, what kind of terms would be unfamiliar to people? There are specific, for every subgroup, specific items and specific language. And the glossary for a group of smokers might be butt, like a cigarette butt, B-U-T-T. There might be vapes, there might be e-cigs, there might be different types of cigarettes, filtered, non-filtered. I'm trying to think all the different kinds of cigarettes. Menthol, non-menthol, DeJarmes, those types of things. So those would be terms that are unfamiliar. Please reach out to me if you have questions and you're like, I can't think of what it might be, what terms might work. And then you're going to have to present the video in an interview format. So that means you either create a Zoom video while you're conducting the interview, or you have a YouTube video that you shoot at the time, a Skype video. Again, if you have specific issues with this, please email me about it. And then you have the informed consent form. And so we're going to talk about the informed consent form, and you can open up that document on your Moodle. It is in order to show that it's for protection of human recipients of study information. So your researcher's contact information is you. I don't need your email, your fax, or your website. You can fill this out by hand or you can type it up. But we do need the information. You can put your name in there and one form of contact, and your informant's name and one form of contact. You will lose points off the interview packet and in your paper if you don't have this. So as you fill it out, it says, I give my permission to, and you put your name in there. So I give my permission to Rebecca Vornberger to use the following in a research project for the class, and then you put in Rhetoric 1060 at Oakland University. And this just lets us know that anything they wrote, anything they spoke, if they gave you images for your artifact, you can use them in your paper, and any other direction they gave you media. If the person you are researching and interviewing prefers that there are names, so I know sometimes we have people that are studying AA groups or NA groups and they don't want their name included in the paper, they can have a pseudonym, a fake name. So whatever you put in there, so if you say, I want the pseudonym John Smith for this project, and then they have to sign it. So if you are working with someone online, you can scan it and have them sign it electronically and send it back, or you can have them print it out, sign it, take a picture of it, and send it to you. I know this is difficult with COVID, but these are the things we have to do to make sure that we are very accurate with the way that we treat our human subjects. So I tried to go through it as quickly as I can. There's some more interview tips in our class this week at Moodle that you can look at, ways and a lot of good ideas for questions, for open-ended questions, and you'll see there's a big difference between the survey questions and the interview questions. To interview one person, only one person in the group. You can interview more than one if you want to, but you'll really need to make sure those answers, those questions are open-ended. So good luck, and start working on how you're going to handle your field visits, as that'll be due next week. Email me if you have any questions, and we can have a online office hours tomorrow. All right, take care.